At the will reading, my dad gave everything to my brother. The house, the business, the savings, even the old watch he used to swear would one day be mine. I just smiled. Lawyer, I said softly, tilting my head, my voice calm enough to make the room uncomfortable. You really want to read all of it out loud? That was the moment everyone noticed my smile wasn't the kind born from weakness. It was the kind that comes from knowing something no one else does. The room where everything ends and begins. The lawyer's office smelled like lemon polish and old paper, the kind of place where lives are neatly folded into folders and sealed with signatures. Sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, casting striped shadows across the mahogany table. My brother Victor sat straight back, jaw tight, hands clasped like he was already praying over his inheritance. He wore a black suit tailored too sharply for grief. Victor never liked wrinkles on his clothes or his conscience. Across from him sat my Aunt Margaret, her lips pursed, eyes darting between us like she was watching a tennis match. On her left was my stepmother, Elaine, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue that hadn't absorbed a single tear. And then there was me. Calm, silent, smiling. I could feel their confusion pressing against me, heavy as humidity before a storm. The lawyer cleared his throat. As you all know, we are here to read the last will and testament of Mr. Thomas Hale. Hearing my father's name felt like a bruise being pressed. It had only been 3 weeks since the funeral, 3 weeks since the man who raised me, loved me in his own complicated way, had been lowered into the ground. Victor didn't look at me, he never did unless he was winning. 2, a childhood of uneven scales. Growing up, people always said we were lucky. 2 boys, healthy, bright, neighbours would say. But luck, I learned early, doesn't always divide itself evenly. Victor was my father's shadow, the eldest, the heir, the one who learned business strategies at 12 and sat in board meetings at 16. When Dad talked about the future, Victor was always standing in it. I was different. I liked books, silence, fixing broken things just to understand how they worked. I preferred listening to Dad's stories over watching him command a room. Dad used to call me the thinker. Victor was the leader. Compliments but also labels. And labels become cages if you let them. 3, the will begins. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. I will now read the will in full. Victor's foot tapped once under the table. Elaine leaned forward. I leaned back. To my eldest son, Victor Hale, the lawyer read, I leave ownership of Hale & Sons Manufacturing, including all associated properties and assets. Victor exhaled, a smile tugging at his lips. Elaine's hand found his arm. I leave him the family home on Briarwood Lanes. Aunt Margaret nodded approvingly. The lake cabins. Victor's smile widened. And all liquid assets held in my personal and corporate accounts. There it was. Everything. The lawyer paused, then continued. To my younger son, Daniel Hale. All eyes snapped to me. I leave my love and my hope that he understands my choices. That was it. Silence crashed into the room like glass. Elaine gasped, Aunt Margaret frowned. Victor finally turned toward me, his eyes gleaming with something dangerously close to pity. That's all, Victor asked, pretending to sound concerned. The lawyer hesitated. Yes, that concludes. I smiled. Lawyer, I interrupted gently, you really want to stop there? The lawyer stiffened. Excuse me. I folded my hands on the table. My father wasn't a man who forgot details. For the smile that changed the air. Victor scoffed. Danny, don't do this. Dad made his decision. I know, I said, very carefully. I looked at the lawyer. Check the codicil. The room froze. Elaine's tissue stopped midair. The lawyer blinked. The codicil. Yes, I said, the handwritten one dated 6 months ago. The lawyer's face paled slightly. He shuffled through the folder, fingers suddenly less confident. There is an addendum, he admitted. I was instructed to read it only if I asked, I finished. Victor stood abruptly. What is this? I met his gaze, still smiling. You'll hear it soon. 5. The father no one fully knew. My father was many things. A businessman. A widower. A man who struggled to say, "I'm proud of you" out loud. But he was also observant. He noticed who stayed late to help the janitor fix a broken sink. Who visited him in the hospital without being asked. Who asked questions not for advantage, but for understanding. 6 months before he died, Dad called me to his study. "I need you to do something for me," he said. I thought he'd ask me to talk to Victor or sign something. Instead, he handed me a key. 6. The codicil is read. The lawyer cleared his throat, voice shaking slightly. "Codicil to the last will and testament of Thomas Hale," he read. Victor's jaw tightened. If you are hearing this, then Daniel has chosen silence over conflict. For that alone, he deserves to know the truth. My chest tightened. Victor, I have given you what you always wanted, control. But control is not ownership of legacy. Victor's face flushed red. Daniel, I leave you something less visible but far more enduring. The lawyer paused. I leave you the rights to the patents filed under my name but never commercialized. I leave you the trust deed to Hale Innovations LLC, and I leave you my final project. Aunt Margaret frowned. What project? The lawyer swallowed. The offshore account tied to that project contains the capital to build something new, something better, something you already understand. Victor laughed harshly. Patents, shell companies, Dad, what is this nonsense? I finally spoke. It's not nonsense, I said quietly, it's the future. 7. What Victor never saw. While Victor was busy running factories, I was sitting in basements with engineers. While he was acquiring competitors, I was helping Dad design cleaner systems, safer machinery, sustainable materials. Hale Innovations wasn't a side project. It was Dad's redemption. And he trusted me with it. The lawyer continued. Daniel, you will find everything in the safe behind the library wall. You always knew it was there. I did. My moral to you both, power fades, character compounds. The lawyer closed the folder. Silence. 8. The aftermath. Victor sank back into his chair, stunned. Elaine's face drained of colour. Aunt Margaret looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. That's impossible, Victor whispered. You have nothing. I stood. I have everything Dad cared about, I said softly. Victor laughed again, but it sounded hollow. You think ideas beat assets. I leaned closer. They always have. 9. The emotional reckoning. Outside, rain had started to fall. I stepped into it without an umbrella, letting it soak my suit, my hair, my skin. For the first time since Dad died, I cried. Not because I'd won, but because he'd seen me. All those years of quiet effort, unnoticed kindness, patient learning, he'd seen it. Inside the office, Victor was still arguing. But the storm had already passed for me. 10 years later. 5 years later, Hale Innovations employed more people than Hale & Sons ever had. Our technology reduced waste by 40% across 3 industries. Victor sold the old business. We rarely spoke. But one evening he showed up at my office. You were right, he said, about Dad. I nodded. About you too. Moral of the story. Not everything of value is announced loudly. Not every inheritance is written in bold ink. Sometimes the greatest rewards are given to those who choose patience over pride, understanding over entitlement, and character over control. Because in the end, what you build with integrity will always outlast what you inherit by force.